Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Alicia with Coaching with Dr. Alicia. Welcome to our conversation today. We are talking about dating and why we skip those red flags, why we do not pay attention to all of the warning signs that men and women can show us when we're dating. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to avoid getting into a relationship with someone who may not have your best interest. And to talk about this story, we're going to use the illustration from the Strawberry Letter story with the Steve Harvey Show. So if you know about the Steve Harvey Show, there's a lady on there. She's been on there for several years. Her name is Shirley Strawberry. And she does this really wonderful segment on Steve Harvey Morning Show about the Strawberry Letter. And she gives like really good, very sound relationship advice that she probably needed to take herself. And this is a very public situation. She married a man. He ended up being a scammer. And also someone who violated members of her family. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But here today to help us talk about this really sad story and, of course, lessons we can learn from it is my dear colleague and friend for life, Dr. Cris. She's here to help us with this important discussion. Say hello, Cris.
Hello.
Yeah. So Cris,
Happy to
by
be
the
here.
way, she's a super Dr. Cris because Cris has 2 PhDs. She has a PhD in industrial organizational psychology. Oh my gosh. And a PhD in clinical psychology. And I have a PhD in social work. It was all I could to get that one PhD. I wouldn't do it twice. But anyway, so Dr. Cris is here. And I want to say hello to everybody. Hello, Ruby. Hello, Daryl and Emmanuel. We got some regular people here. I remember these names. So hey, everybody saying hey to Dr. Cris. Have you
Hello.
guys heard about anybody type in the chat if you heard about this really sad story about Shirley Strawberry? I think it's so ironic that she's on this show for a really long time. She's given all this wonderful relationship advice. And it's like, here she is kind of caught in this scam of a marriage, really. And how long it took her to kind of wake up to what's going on. But I think that one thing that I'd like for us to discuss is, number one, I want to talk about why we ignore the red flags. Number two, I want to talk about once you wake up and you realize that the person you're dating isn't quite what you thought this person was. What do we do once we realize that you're kind of in a relationship and you're in really deep with a scammer? Oh my goodness, as well as a perpetrator. And how embarrassing and humiliating this is. I mean, it's one thing that we go through it in our personal lives, but to go through it in your personal life and then have everybody know about it, how humiliating this is. But the biggest thing is that I would like for us to also have a conversation about key lessons, things we can learn from this story, big takeaway, so we don't end up in a situation like this. Did you have anything to add to this, Cris?
No, I mean, I love this because I think that's one of the things Shirley was hoping for is, learn from me. And I think you and I both are those kind of people. Like, if there's anything we can say about this is nobody's immune. It can happen to anyone. And
Oh,
so, yes, she's saying, learn from me.
you
And
know
I
what?
embrace it.
I love what you're saying, how nobody is immune, because if you look at Shirley Strawberry's career, I mean, she's an amazing woman and
Exactly.
she is very successful. She's been on this show with Steve Harvey for a long time. She's got this great personality. And I
Mhm.
really do think, like, I've listened to some of her advice. It's really sound
Too.
advice that she's giving. And even
Mhm.
she is not immune to
Oh,
being vulnerable enough to put herself in this situation. And what's interesting about her situation is that Steve Harvey introduced her to her husband. She was married to a man. I know she filed for divorce, but she's married to a man named Ernesto Ernesto Williams, who and Steve Harvey, I guess, was a mutual friend of theirs and introduced him. Can you imagine how Steve Harvey feels? I'm almost certain, I think I read somewhere that Steve Harvey publicly apologized for that. So, it's really kind of sad. But so let's get into our conversation here. Number one, Cris, I wanted to ask you about is clearly Shirley Strawberry ignored a lot of the red flags. She did not, she chose to ignore the red flags because she spoke about the fact that initially Ernesto was very secretive, particularly about his finances, and he was constantly borrowing money from her. And now she's looking back on it, she said, I didn't pay attention to these warning signs and red flags and didn't kind of question things a little more at the beginning. Why do we do this, Dr. Cris?
I know, right? The very first thing I want to say is, like you said, the key word, why do we do this? It wasn't just her. We do this. I think we would be hard pressed to find a woman in this world of dating age or, of age to have this kind of experience that would say, yep, I didn't, I've had a situation or I did not have a situation where I ignored the red flags. But
What
it's
goes on with us the moment we see something that we know is not right? Why do we ignore it? And is part of it, I think sometimes we ignore the red flags. I'm wondering, is that we don't resist the urge to go too fast. Like, I think we just, and that is a warning sign in and of itself. When they love bomb you and stuff, you go too fast and you dig in and get in there too fast and too deep. And
yes.
then you've told everybody about it. And then you start noticing these red flags and you feel kind of stuck. And I also wonder too, I mean, she should know better. She was in her late 50s. She's almost 60 years old, I think, from what I read. So it seems like she should know better. But part of me just wonders if maybe she was lonely.
Well, I will say this. It's funny that you say she should know better because I think it goes back to where none of us are immune. I don't care how old you are, how much experience you've had. I think that what we do know for sure is women, no matter what age, what status, what socioeconomic status, meaning what race, we've had a lot of us have experience. And if it wasn't ourselves, we sure know a good friend that's gone through it. So, I mean, yeah, she should have known better. I think that's what we tend to say. And, both of, Alicia, we know we don't pay attention to those shoulds, right? Don't pay attention to the shoulds. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. The fact of the matter is you have to look at it as, I think, a learning process,
Yeah.
And so there are, I think, reasons. I mean, one of the things that came to mind about why we ignore those red flags is, well, we all have those defense mechanisms, right?
Yes. Denial is a good one. Denial is a good, and it's so funny how, like, you can't deal with the feelings. Like, maybe when she saw these red flags, it was too overwhelming and she couldn't deal with it. So she just said, I'm just going to ignore it. And then maybe
Right.
you can work through it, because if a man, he had a very successful business. Why would he be borrowing money from her if he had a successful business? And it seems like he was kind of cheating on her and dating around with other women. So she was in big time denial. And I don't know if he was like holding it down that good in the bedroom, making you cry or something. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But it can't be that good.
Right?
You
Not
know.
not being well. I mean, I'm thinking even too. It's like you can hold it down in the bedroom, but let's be clear. What is the arrangement here? And I don't think she was in the know about what his arrangement was. One thing I would say about that though, Alicia, is you know what? When I read, I mean, this is what I read. I assume it's true, but when I read that Shirley got a private investigator.
Oh,
I
she
think
was smart. Hmm.
I feel like, here's another thing we can all deal with is the fact that, sometimes as friends or family, and I think this is part of what Shirley is going through in her situation, people are trying to tell you, and that's such a delicate situation, right? And I've seen it where I've seen the gamut. Some people will retaliate, and that's the end of your friendship, or that's the end of your family um bond. But what stood out to
Interesting.
me, oh, I'm sorry, Alicia, but
No.
what I was going to say, what stood out to me is like, the thing is, when we talk about red flags, I think there's that little voice inside of us, and that's that little voice that got, for example, Shirley to say, let me get a private investigator to figure this out. you know and maybe that's one of the red flags is, don't ignore that little voice.
Yeah, and I think maybe she came to him and asked him about it, and he gave her a plausible reason. And
Oh,
maybe she was a little conflicted, and she was like, okay, I gotta get, because if you're a kind-hearted person, which I really do think, like listening to Shirley, she's a really kind-hearted
she
person. And
is.
I think she's the perfect target
She
for a
definitely
scammer or a con, because she wants to know, she was open, she believes that everybody is beautiful and trusting and a little naive. And I think that maybe she trusted too much because someone she had worked with for a really long time introduced her. So maybe she was like, all right, you know what, Shirley? And a lot of us do this. We rationalize in our head, you know what? This guy can't be that bad because somebody I really look up to, somebody I really respect, like Steve Harvey, introduces me to this man. So he's got to be legitimate. And I'm
right.
thinking that maybe she just rationalized it in her head to say, you know what? I'm ready for love. I'm going to open myself up to love. And maybe she was making note of some of the things that he was doing to wait and see. But perhaps she just
Yeah.
kind of blindly went in. And that's the thing with relationships. When you get married, both of us have been married, or I'm married, but we've been there, right? There is no 100% guarantee. Like there's an element of getting married to somebody where there's a little unknown. You can't 100% know that the person you're married, is going to be the right person for you. So there is a little bit of a leap of faith that we take when we get married. So I'm thinking maybe this is what a lot of us think, when we get into situations that we know is not good for us. So, oh my gosh. So I think that's why you brought up some good points. I think that's why we ignore some of the red flags. I think sometimes we're lonely, and we just are very needy, and so we tend to like, it tends to blur our vision. We don't really see things how they need to be seen. I think sometimes we're just in denial, and those are the things, and we're lonely and needy, and I think those are the things that make us ignore those red flags. Oh my goodness. So
Yes.
so
Yes.
who yeah, and what's interesting is that when you're deciding to get married, I don't know why people don't have conversations that they need to have. And um actually I wrote a workbook. Did I tell you this, Cris? I wrote a workbook called Drama Free Marriage. And it is all about sitting down and asking somebody questions about what they want their marriage to look like, coming up with an
Yeah.
agreement on finances, and all of the questions that a lot of us don't ask before we get married, and pin all of this stuff down and vet somebody and have these important conversations. So I wrote a workbook on that. It's called Drama-Free. Drama-Free Marriage. It's called Drama-Free Marriage. So that when you get married, you've already worked out some of the kinks that typically happen when you're getting married. So you can get my workbook at coachingwithdralicia.com. You can also get it on drboycebooks.com as well. Okay. So anyway, so let's go on to the next question. Okay. So you're in the position of Shirley Strawberry, and you realize you're married to a scammer. And you decided that you're not in denial anymore. You're going to believe the red flags, but you're stuck. You're stuck in this situation. And maybe stuck is not a good word. Maybe it's a perception of being stuck, because no one's stuck in any relationship.
Right.
What do you do? Like, what's the first thing you do, when you're in a situation like this, Cris?
Well, the first and foremost thing I think is you have to avoid shaming yourself.
Yeah.
We are human.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to be, what's the saying? 2020, hindsight is 2020 vision. It's so easy to look back and say, oh, this was a flag, that was a flag. But, focus on the present. We're here and now.
Yeah.
And shaming does nothing for us, right?
Yeah, I love that, because shaming means like, oh, how can I be so stupid? Oh my goodness. And I think you need to have compassion for yourself.
Exactly.
And I think that we all make mistakes in love. We've all made mistakes in love. And I think she was very courageous to kind of open up and talk about it publicly. So that took some courage and some humility. But I hope that she got the help that she needs to heal from this deception, and that she can come away from it with some compassion. And I think we all need to be compassionate. And I hope that she has a support system that's equally as compassionate to her, not to excuse what he's done or excuse her ignoring the red flags, but I think you need to have that compassion so that you don't walk away from it feeling worse, feeling like your self-esteem is totally damaged. And I do think that you should get some help and just confess and just come on out with it, and share your story. She now has a story. She's got the strawberry letter story, that we're talking about today, that can hopefully help a whole bunch of other people. So if there's anybody right now who is dating somebody and is ignoring the red flags, but you're starting to wake up to it, you're not stuck. It's the perception of being stuck. You're not stuck in any situation, and you can make some of the moves. And sometimes it takes skill, because in a relationship like that with someone who deceived you and who's scamming you, a relationship like that, you can't just abruptly leave.
No.
You have to kind of plan your exit.
Right.
And that's where you need your friends and everybody to kind of gather behind you so that you can plan things out, and that you can kind of leave a situation where sometimes the damage won't be as deep as it is, like getting your financial stuff together, getting things in your name. There's some things that you can do to kind of protect yourself, and also getting some therapy is one way to do that. So yeah, so that's one way I think to kind of get out. But anyway, so this is unfortunate, everybody. We're talking about Shirley Strawberry. She is I think she's a really wonderful lady. I like her advice. She's on the Steve Harvey Morning Show. She reads about complicated relationship situations called Strawberry Letter, and she herself was is going through and was probably for many years. Can you imagine? She was doing that show knowing that she herself was going through this situation. And it's funny how successful women and men can put a mask on. They can mask some of the things that they're going through in their private
Yeah,
life. It's like a compartmentalization. It's like you
absolutely.
compartmentalize, you put things over to the side, and then you show up to work and you're on. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
meanwhile, in the back of your head, you're still having these sort of issues. So I think I would hope for her and for many of us that go through stuff like this that it's a sigh of relief that you don't have to carry this mask around anymore. You can really
Absolutely.
live your authentic life and get rid of people in your life that's toxic and damaging to you. So, anyway, with that, let's go to our last and final question, Cris, Dr. Cris. Key lessons. What are some key lessons that we need to take away so that we do not ignore the red flags when we're in a relationship, and in ways in which we can, once we start opening up to what may be happening in our relationship, lessons to learn from Shirley Strawberry. What would you say?
I think my number one is never underestimate, um, the feedback you're getting from your support system. Um, One of the rules I use, and maybe people can do the same, is, okay, you might hear it from one person, but when you start hearing it from two, three, four people within your support group, and it's resonating even with some part of your own perception, don't ignore it. Pay attention to that.
Yeah, and it's not, and you shouldn't take it as a I told you so sort of thing. You really
Yeah,
should take it as these people really love you and they really care for you and they want the
absolutely.
best for you. They want you to be loved. They see your worth. Even though sometimes we don't see our own worth, the people close to us, they see our worth, and so they're
Absolutely.
more objective.
That's right.
They could bring that objective eye, and you need to have a listening ear, and instead of saying you don't understand our relationship or you don't understand what's going on, really
Right.
sit and take some of that stuff in. I think that's really good. Listen to your support system, because your mama loves you and your best friend loves you too.
Right.
And not to say that you listen to them and they guide your relationship, but really
Right.
take it into consideration. That's a good one.
Absolutely.
Okay, I got one lesson.
I want to hear it.
My lesson is trust your gut.
I like it.
Deep down, when you know something ain't right with that person, and your friends are telling you what you already kind of have a hunch and know, trust
Yep.
your gut, because you're going to think back on it and you're going to be like, I knew it. I knew something wasn't right. Something wasn't adding up with this person. So I
Absolutely.
think we have to trust our instincts, because that little voice in your head, that instinct there is loves you too. You love your higher self, wherever you think. It could be the voice of God, or your higher self, whatever you believe in, because we believe in
Right.
everything. It's important to have intuition, and we as women have really good intuition. So
That is so true.
yeah. Okay, so
Yes.
what, you have any other lessons? One more lesson from you, Cris.
One more lesson, I would say that, this is, I think, it goes without saying that it's a very difficult time to go through when this happens to you. So be nice to yourself. Um, take time to um do the extra things that, you know, you would do for your best friend, or you would do for your child, or, you know, Get that massage.
Mm.
Take that extra hour to sleep in. Take a nap during the day. Whatever it is to nourish your soul, do that more so during this time.
Yeah, I think self-care is so important when you're going through difficult times. And and it's weird. It could be something little. You don't even have to spend a lot of money on it. It could be
No.
something little like taking an extra long bath. That sort of self-care, it instantly makes you feel good. So I really think that's important. I also think what's important is when you're in a relationship with somebody, you
Mhm.
need to take it slow. I call it turtle it through. Like there's no rush. Just because you're 60 or 50, there's no rush. You can wait another year.
Yeah.
And just because you're 50 something years old, you can start over. You could easily, release yourself from this relationship and heal yourself, and you can still find love. There are lots of people. The Bachelor, did you see that? Chris, The Bachelor
Oh, the
is a
Golden
guy.
Bachelor.
Yeah, he's an older guy. And
Yeah.
yeah, just because you're in your 50s or 60s, hey, the 50
70s,
is the
80s.
new 40, right? It's the new 30 in some instincts. So I just think, like, don't think that you could just adhere yourself to toxic relationships because you're under the mindset that there's scarcity, that you're not going to find
Right.
anybody else, and that you're just so lucky that you got this person with you, and you have to hold on tight to this person because you think you're under the impression that you won't find anybody. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't, guess what? It doesn't even matter what you look like.
No. No.
All
No,
of
no,
us,
no.
all of us are worthy. And as far as I'm concerned, beauty is on the inside. So when
Mhm.
someone says I'm beautiful, I'm like, no, I hope you're talking about the inner me, because looks can fade and all of this, but I'm still Dr. Alicia. I'm still gonna try to be, the best person I could possibly be. So beauty's on the inside. And I think that as long as you keep that with you, you're not stuck in this situation.
No.
You're not stuck. And I'm gonna tell you, in my practice, Chris, there's
Uh-huh.
so many couples who come to me and they say, okay, I'm about to get married. What can I do? How can I have some clarity with this situation? There's so
Yeah.
many couples who are married that I see, and they're just like, I think we're ready to be done with this. We don't know. And there's so many people who come to me because they need clarity in their relationship. It really is a crossroad. It's like, Dr.
Yes.
Alicia, please help us. Either
Yes.
get rid of this man or I don't know what to do, And so
Yes.
I start having, and maybe a lesson learned is to seek professional help when you're not quite sure. Because let me tell you something, I will get down to the bottom of it. I don't know, I'm kind of direct a little bit, and I hope I don't hurt people's
Mhm.
feelings. But
It's correct.
it comes from a place of compassion, and I just slow the conversation down.
Mhm.
I don't say, wait, hold on. You just said a bunch of different things. We're going to slow this down. And it takes some time, but we go through point by point. Tell me exactly what you meant by that. Wait, I'm
Yeah.
noticing some contradictions. Could you please explain this? And I don't care. Like, I'm totally objective because I'm about getting to clarity. I'm not about making sure people stay together. I'm definitely not of the mindset that people need to, just because you have problems in your marriage doesn't mean you need to get divorced. I definitely don't think that.
No.
And
No.
and I don't think that even if you have problems in your marriage, you have to do everything that you need to do to stay together. Like, I'm not
Right.
about that. I'm about the clarity. You don't know what's happening, something is going on. Let's find clarity in the relationship.
Mm.
And that
Yep.
way you'll know how to proceed.
Yes.
I'm not attached to the outcome. I'm attached
Right.
to the process of communication. So I think that would be my last tip is really have those hard conversations you need to have. And sometimes they're too painful.
Yeah.
And you need to have that conversation with a professional. And if I float your boat, you can always come see me. And I think Dr. Cris, you're so good. You need to start seeing clients. I'm gonna talk to you. I need you to
Okay.
I'm gonna get you to start seeing clients too, because we need you. We need people we need double PhDs.
Oh, I'm absolutely willing to help. And, I absolutely agree. I mean, it's the idea, I think, just to kind of say differently what you were just saying is that a lot of people I've run into that talk about, well, how is this going to help?
Yeah.
And or at the same time they think, oh, let me go see a therapist. They're going to tell me what to do. No, that's not our job. No.
Mm-mm.
What our job is, like Dr. Alicia was saying, is we clarify. And really, it's helping you understand what is your decision. It's not our decision. What is best for you? And our role in that is clarifying for you so you can see the different variables. You can understand even, I mean, again, no one is exempt. We all are human beings. We have internal processes and things happening. We have histories. All of those things impact us. So, yeah, it's absolutely. And the other thing I would say, no harm, no foul, right?
Mhm.
In a way, like you get the clarity, but no matter what your choice is, there's no problem with that.
I love it. I do. I love it. There's no problem with whatever the choice that you make. You just have to make sure that you can live with it, and
That's
you were able to have a sacred space. I mean, really, therapy is sacred. I mean, it's a sacred, it's almost like time. Like I'm so zoomed in. I'm so locked in with my clients. It really is sacred. Like half the time I'm like, oh wait, time is up. We can't, let's stop this now.
right.
I don't want I go over sometimes because I am so locked in to the process
Yes.
of talking all of this through. And sometimes we get right to where we need to be, but we have to wrap it up because you only get 50 minutes, 55 minutes, because there's people waiting. So
Right.
yeah, and so I think it is important to have those conversations. So hello, okay, let's look at the chat. Thank you, Deborah Shepherd. Oh, look, she says, thank you for this beautiful information. Thank you, Deborah. Who else is here? Cynthia, Compliment King. Oh, Compliment King is a PhD. He's got a PhD. That's what's up. A black male PhD. Yeah. All right. And Ari and Deborah, thank you for coming.
Right.
Deborah. So anyway, today we had a good conversation today, Dr. Cris. we we talked about why we ignore the red flags. Now we know why we ignore red flags. It's about being lonely. We're in denial. We don't listen to what our friends say. All of this. Once you wake up, what do? We talked about that today. Once you start realizing that the relationship is not going the way you thought it would go, what do you do? So we talked about
Yes.
that today. And then lastly, we had some takeaways, which is basically have a good support system. Open communication with your partner is very important. Slow those conversations down. Pay
Yes.
attention to the warning signs. Trust your gut. All of these things we've talked about today. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up, Dr. Cris?
I think you got the full list. Thank you, Dr. Alicia.
Well, thank you, Dr. Cris. And I'm gonna hit you up to come back on here because we've been we've known each other since college. So we got each other's stories. Dating stories for sure.
Always a pleasure.
Always
Thank
a
you. Thank you
pleasure.
so much for having me. I love it.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.